For Read Aloud today, we're going to hear The Curious Garden by Peter Brown. I like this book because it kind of reminds me of the message of where you can grow food that comes from Farmer Will Allen. The Curious Garden. Once there was a city without gardens or trees or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place. Not very beautiful, very brown and gray. However, there was one boy who loved being outside. Even on drizzly days while everyone else stayed inside, you could always find Liam happily splashing through his neighborhood. It was on one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway, as he did from time to time, when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up to the tracks. The railway had stopped working ages ago, and since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for the curious boy to do. It's good that those tracks weren't running anymore, because that wouldn't be safe, but the train doesn't go anymore. It's just sitting there doing nothing. Liam ran up the stairs, pushed open the door, and stepped out onto the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely patch of color. Wildflowers and plants were the last thing he expected to find up there. But when he looked closer, it became clear that the plants were dying. They needed a gardener. There they are, teeny little things. Those plants need help. Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway ahead of it, the garden was growing restless. It wanted to explore. The tough little weeds and mosses were the first to move. They popped up farther and farther down the tracks and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. I skipped a page. I was like, wait a second, let's go back. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help, so he returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned, and he had a few pruning problems, but the plants patiently waited while Liam found better ways of gardening. He's singing to the plants, taking off the dead bits, watering. And as the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. Look, it's looking bigger and more beautiful. And then on this page, we learned that they started going further and further down the tracks and still started looking like this. Over the next few months, Liam and the Curious Garden explored every corner of the railway. Look at it's growing all over the place now. They just needed a little help. Plants help us, and we can help them back. Whoa, look at all those flowers. All thanks to Liam's help. So plants wanted to be here, but we took all the plants out to put in buildings and concrete and all these things. The plants are like, we're going to come back. We just got to give them a little help. After spending the spring and summer and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season, and for the first time since he'd become a gardener, Liam could not visit the plants. They're resting. It's winter. The plants are resting. Rather than waste his winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for spring. So it kind of looks like sometimes in the winter that everything died. And you're like, uh-oh, did this plant die? And you just have to wait and see in the spring. Not all plants come back. Some are meant to come back and some don't. But a lot of those plants will come back. You just got to be patient. After 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt. And Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to the railway. He definitely doesn't live in Portland because we don't get that much snow all winter. Sometimes we get snow. Winter had taken a toll on the garden. Uh-oh. There was a lot of snow. But thanks to Liam's planning, his handy new tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon awoke from their winter sleep. He's singing to them, giving them love. The garden had always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first, and they popped up farther and farther from the railway, and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. They're like, we want to come back. We used to live here, and y'all took us out to build all these, things. And they're like, let us come back. We're coming back. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. Things that nobody's using. The plants are like, we'll grow here. We don't mind. A few plants popped up where they didn't belong. Uh-oh, stop sign. That stop sign needs to be clear so people will stop. On a fire hydrant. That needs to go so firefighters could use it if they need to. Others mysteriously popped up all at once. Oh, it's like, whoa. Whoa. But the most surprising things that popped up were the new gardeners. So all these plants are popping up and the people are like, oh, this is awesome. We want a garden too. Maybe they just didn't know how or didn't know they could in their city because there wasn't anything green growing. And now that there are green things growing, people can help. Whoa, look at those steps made of mosses and grasses. People are having a picnic out there. Kids are playing by the water and animals. I bet that a lot of animals didn't live there if there wasn't something green to eat. Some more animals are going to live there too, birds. Many years later, the entire city had blossomed. But of all the new gardeners, Liam's favorite was where it all began. Of all the new gardens. So his favorite is where the railway used to be. Look at it now. It's beautiful. Whole tree is growing there now. Whoa, look what it looks like now. Does it look as brown and gray and unpleasant? No. It looks really beautiful and people aren't all hiding inside. They're outside enjoying their beautiful city. This reminds me a little bit more of Portland. Portland has a lot of greenery. The end. I hope you enjoyed this book.